Hey everybody, today we are debating socialism versus capitalism, in particular, democratic socialism versus la laissez-faire. Thank you so much, Gregory, and we are starting right now. Ladies and gentlemen, thrilled to have you here. I am very excited for this one, folks. We have not gotten to do a debate on this topic for a while. In particular, we really have never done this exact topic, as it's more precise this time with democratic socialism versus laissez-faire capitalism. And just to let you know, speaking of laissez-faire, I usually say this all the time and I blanked on it. We are, you could say, laissez-faire in the sense that we're like, hey, we want everybody to have a chance to share their idea here. We do very little regulation or like any sort of censorship. We really do want this to be an eclectic community of Christians, atheists, Democrats, Republicans, and all the strange creatures in between. So if this is your first time here and you love debates, feel free to hit that subscribe button and that notification button for reminders of future debates. In fact, we will have Destiny. I am very excited. He is coming back to debate whether or not Trump is racist this Sunday as an example of a awesome debate we have coming up. So with that, want to let you know, we are very thrilled to have both Prodigy Gregory and GreySkeptic here tonight. And just to let you know, Gregory, I gave Gregory that name. He never self-titled himself a prodigy, but you might be thinking, like, oh, wait a minute, like Gregory looks a little bit young. Believe me, it's true. Gregory's young, but his debate skills, you'll see for yourself, folks. So with that, just want to let you know that the gentlemen have their links in the description. So if you enjoy what you're hearing, feel free. You can check out their channel. And with that, very excited to let the ball get rolling. We're going to do roughly 10-minute opening statements, and they're flexible just to kind of let the speakers kind of introduce themselves for a minute or two, kind of explain where they're coming from, and then kind of, you could say, lay out their case for their position. So with that, very excited to have you here, folks. And Prodigy Gregory, thanks for being here. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, very much, James and GreySkeptic. I've always wanted to do this kind of debate for a long time. It's like economic debates as opposed to the strictly, religious debates, which I used to have. First off, I want to start off by saying I am nonpartisan, and the second thing I wanted to say is I'm not a pure libertarian in the sense like Ayn Rand and Murray Rothbard. I don't believe that we need to have absolutely no welfare, no state intervention, like nothing. We just have complete anarchy or whatever. In my opinion, I think I'm more of a moderate libertarian in the sense I believe in welfare, but still enough to, but not so much that it interferes with the well-being of government, of well-being of economic growth, let's just say. Okay, so I'm going to start off with the first problem I have generally with socialism is that it fails to distribute and allocate resources efficiently in a complex market, right? Because there will be price signals and changes everywhere. And to be able to control that, in my opinion, would be inordinately difficult, if not impossible. I think that humans decide in what is an economic democracy, price changes from consumers to workers. If a consumer thinks that a product is overpriced for the cost of its value, then in order for the business to survive, it must adjust that price. If a worker thinks he's underpaid for the cost of his labor, then the business must also automatically adjust to that price range in order for the business not to collapse as well. I don't think that the government or the bureaucrats will be able to track down the price of something, as I think they're human constructs essentially, and that they will change constantly based on human demand. So this is really just a democracy of people decide what a price is. And I think this is also a challenge to, there's this economist named John Maynard Keynes. In Keynes in economics, there's this process called price stickiness, which is that workers don't adjust to their price. But I disagree with that, and I think that as for the fact that a worker might adjust his price in order for more profit or less profit per se, or for the business to simply go down if he says, "I'm not doing this, you're underpaying me." I think of course, Keynesian economics is far from a democratic socialist economy, in my opinion. But it's on that, I guess, road to serfdom. There's a mathematical theory called chaos theory as well, which says that the economy is too fragile and complex. This is the economic application to it, to be interfered with and make long decisions. Because what chaos theory says is that small differences in initial conditions, which are very complex, will lead to very vastly different outcomes for dynamical systems, which implies that differences in initial conditions and long-term prediction will be really hard to do, and planning is pretty much impossible. Edward Lorenz, a physicist, described chaos as when the present determines the future, but the approximate present does not approximately determine the future. Meaning it's hard for the government to really predict the future as there are too many variables. So in other words, the economy is sensitive to initial conditions, and it mixes too easily, which is why I think that there's too much chaos in the economy in order for there to be a kind of order established by the government. The second problem I believe with socialism is that it would stifle competition, which means slowing down technological advance, reducing incentives to do critical jobs. Let's just say healthcare. We'll talk about that a little bit later, within the framework of supply and demand. Meaning, let's just say we have medical fields, right? You would need good healthcare in order to. Not even just good healthcare. You need great healthcare. Otherwise, those can be life-determining situations. Because in a socialist economy, the problem is that there would be little incentive to do work for good care because it's not for really any kind of wage. Healthcare is free, meaning wages given by corporate or by companies and other hospitals, for instance, would be banned in a socialist economy, and everyone would have relatively equal wages. Let's say that's pretty extreme. That's that's going into communist territory. But as far as democratic socialism, I think it's still there. That same problem, and there would be no material reward because humans aren't selfless. In my opinion, human nature is not selfless. It won't just do things randomly for the common good. So we have to establish the fact that humans are still somewhat selfish in the sense that they want a material reward for a given thing that they do. So this is why in every socialist country such as Venezuela, which I think is the closest to coming to a socialist country, we'll talk about that later, the healthcare is not good. And people are more likely to die in a hospital, much more than in a traditional free market economy. So the idea of a free exchange is that, okay, I give you when there is both sides of an exchange get something that they value more than what they have to give up. Yeah. I think now the next problem for socialism that I'll outline is that money exists. Even if the government bans money or free exchange or limits it to some extent, an underground economy or a black market always emerges because money is a fundamental concept. And for instance, in prisons, instead of money, which it doesn't exist in prisons, they've replaced it with ramen noodles. I don't know, $1 is 3 ramen noodles. I'm not sure of the exact price system. But in prisons, people have essentially replaced money with ramen noodles or whatever else they do. Because people use money, and the concept of a free exchange, and just to a large extent free market capitalism, will still somehow emerge, but in a relatively inefficient way. So pretty much the USSR and other socialist economies just turned out to be inefficient capitalism. So the fourth problem with socialism is, and one that has been outlined a lot, is that the closest thing to a socialist economy, which is Venezuela, turned out to be a complete disaster. And it featured everything that was associated with democratic socialism. There's, I think, the abolition of private property. They have they gave over 6 million acres of land to the public. They have a heavy progressive income tax. I think they have government-sponsored labor unions that control the means of production. And initially, socialists and democratic ones alike supported it, but it did not. But it did not really work because people are in diet, people are in poverty, prices are so high that people can't afford a tomato and have to wait like 12 hours in line to get a jug of milk. But I don't. But and yeah, this is which is why this is one of those minor arguments. The rest are way more serious than this one. But this is just another example of why I don't think socialism has worked yet, and I'm not sure if it will work again. And my last problem with socialism, and then I want to give the mic to Mac, would be that there's way more concentration of wealth under socialism than under capitalism. Like, say, if we're in a socialist America, then, I don't know, let's just say the Ministry of Software would control Microsoft, Google, Oracle, and other software companies under one single unaccountable bureaucracy that has monopoly power, essentially. And whereas in our free market capitalist economy, like think of companies, say Johnson & Johnson, Apple, Chevron, off the top of my head, Boeing, McDonald's, which these are all happen to be owned by the public, like pension funds of workers, teachers, all kinds of retirees, and small business owners as well. And that's how in a free market capitalist economy, and there's competition to give you the best product, they cannot hide from competition, such as like socialist bureaucracies. So, yeah, this is my opening statement. I don't want to waste too much time, but I do want to say that me and Mac and I have a lot of agreements, such as that we have established the social liberalism, the concept of civil rights, stuff like that. We both agree on that. But the economic side, I hope in this debate we can really resolve. So I yield my time to Mac. Thank you very much for this opening statement.
Gotcha. Thank you very much, Gregory. It's been a pleasure to have both of you here so far. It's been epic already, and I just want to remind Gregory, I don't know if you remember, I told you, I think it was we've been trying to set up this debate for like it's been months. And Gregory, I told you, if you remember, that we would put 100% of the super chats toward charity, which I forgot, and I'm so sorry that I forgot. So I'm announcing it right now. 100% of the super chats that come in will be going to charity tonight. So, and by 100%, I mean even the like 30% that YouTube takes as their like YouTube tax. We will use past super chat funds from other streams to like raise it back up to the full 100%. And we're donating to basically it's a UNCF, which is an organization that has or provides scholarships for historically black colleges and universities for students at those universities. So with that, we basically, our way of just saying, we usually do once a month where we do a charity stream, and that's the charity we will be giving to tonight because, one, we just kind of want to do what we can to try to help alleviate inequality out there, and second of all, we just value education. So with that, GreySkeptic, so thank you. Appreciate your patience. The floor is all yours. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pleased to be here. Well, first up, I am Mac of GreySkeptic and Leah, the League of Extraordinary Atheists for Humanism. Excuse me. I am still getting over a cold, for those of you who don't know. So if you hear me cough or I sound a little funny, that's why. I do apologize. So I guess where I want to start, I didn't write an opening statement. So this will probably be moderately short. But I wanted to listen to Greg here and see what he had to say about the democratic socialism or just socialism in general. So the two things that I really want to touch base on real quick before I move on to my whole spiel is Keynes. He mentioned Keynes. And John Keynes, he advocated for just about like a free market, but a regulated market. He wanted a regulated market. He wanted the government to step in when necessary to regulate the market and stimulate the economy. And I'm a little bit of a Keynesianist to myself. I think he had a lot of good ideas. And I kind of had the philosophy of everything in moderation. You know, you have to regulate just about everything that we have and do, including the regulation itself, including government. What regulates? We need to regulate government that regulates business. So that kind of gives you a brief overview of where I'm at. That's a little bit of a principle base that I have. Regulation. The other thing was Venezuela. I want to touch on real quick, but then I don't want to touch on it too much after this. If you want to talk about it, Greg, we can. But Venezuela really isn't a great example of not just what I'm talking about for democratic socialism, but even socialism in general, because the failing, at least, of Venezuela isn't just due to their economic system. It's really due to a lot of foreign meddling, because they had one of the most democratic countries and elections in the world, really. And when we called them out, and just a couple other countries, we started helping the coup take place in Venezuela, and a big part of that is because they nationalized their oil, not just I can't remember the amount of land that you said that they gave to the public. I'm sorry.
6 million acres of land. I believe about 6 million acres of land.
6 million acres. Okay.
I'm more or less.
And that can be. I would have to look more into that to really talk about that too, because I don't know what part of the public that they gave that to. But again, we could talk about that later. My main point is they have a lot of oil reserves in Venezuela. And if there's anything we've learned from history, is that where there's oil, America wants some standing there. So all through the Middle East, Libya, Saudi Arabia, Syria, if there's oil, if there's natural resources there that we can use, we kind of put our foot on that spot on the map. So when there's a lot of foreign intervention in a country, it's really hard to judge what their economic system is really like and how it's working, when there's so much sabotage going from all different angles, and not just talking about the coup, but also about sanctions. When there's sanctions on a country, it's hard to tell how the economic system is doing on its own. Other than that, I do want to go through a few of my main points here, and then we'll go ahead and move on. I don't want to take up too much more time. I think these 2 points here, and then we can move on. One thing I want to say, and I want to see if you agree with, is something called meritocracy. And I got this.
Agree, by the way.
You do agree with meritocracy. Well, I'll say for the viewers who don't know, if they don't know, and I got this from Wikipedia. Meritocracy is a political system in which economic goods and or political power are vested in individual people on the basis of talent, efforts, and achievement, rather than wealth or social class. Advancement in such a system is based on performance as measured through examination or demonstrative achievement. Sorry. So kind of just to sum that up a little bit, most people refer to meritocracy as if you're there and you're like working for something, like that's the thing. Like you have to work for what you have. The other thing that I kind of want to argue for, and this will lead into everything else that I'm getting to, excuse me, social safety nets. I believe we need social safety nets. And I think at some degree, Greg will probably agree with me on these. But we need to have social safety nets that help regular people in times of economic crisis. So like take the crash of 2008, for instance. Big banks received collectively $700 billion in the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act of 2008. That's a government handout, right? That's socialism, but for those who are too big to fail. But what if we had put that money in the hands of the people? What could we have done with $2,295 each? As you may argue, why trust the government with that money when we can use it ourselves? If we spent that money on our own personal debts, the banks would have gotten that money anyways. And it would have helped the economy. And maybe 10 million homeowners wouldn't have lost their homes. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, is that we need social safety nets. And that can take the form of sometimes government handouts, and sometimes social programs like fire department, healthcare, police, roads, schools, city busing, school busing, all that. And we'll get into that more, but that is my whole thing. Thank you very much, guys.
Great. That was a good opening statement.
Awesome. And with that, we will go right into the open discussion. So thank you guys very much. And the floor is yours.
Yeah. Hello, Mac, once again. This was, so yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I do believe in a social safety net. I think, but of course, like I don't think that has anything to do with socialism per se. That's just welfare, which a lot of people do believe. And to some extent, I do believe the Keynesian theory, which is that sometimes we need to increase government spending in order to fund things such as roads and stuff, which is necessary in an economy, but not too much. Because as we've said before, and I've used stuff like chaos theory and other forms of theories that have been established by philosophers such as Ludwig von Mises, economists, let's say, and Friedrich Hayek, which they say is too much government spending will lead to the economy going crazy, because when you're trying to establish order in chaos and start trying to establish a bureaucracy through chaos, that might lead to some bad consequences. But for the large part, I do agree that there needs to be some sort of government spending in order to fund for necessary things such as roads. But
so I agree, real quick. I agree that if there's too much government spending on the wrong thing, that can excuse me, that can definitely be bad for the economy. It can be not just bad for our local economy, but for like the worldwide economy, right? So I guess I'd like to ask you, where do you think the government should not be spending money?
Well, there's a lot of things, but I think the only thing the government should really be spending its money on is, I think it's like roads, first of all. Then a little bit on the social safety net, but too much handouts will lead to an effect we don't want. And maybe high tax on gasoline might work, but that would depend on the idea whether you view gasoline as immoral or not. So pretty much, so yeah, that's what I think the government should be spending on. There's a lot of things it shouldn't be spending on, because either the variables are way too complex, or it will lead to some form of broken fiscal monetary policy.
Okay, so you and I agree on roads.
Yeah,
absolutely. I don't think everyone should have to pave their own road. I don't think anyone should necessarily own road.
Yeah, that anarcho-capitalist minarchist thing is a little bit too much. Yeah,
absolutely. So I'm glad we agree there. So you said there's a lot of things that the government shouldn't spend money on. Can you name 2 or 3 things that you think that they shouldn't spend too much money on? And I could do the same as well. I don't want to ask anything of you that I'm not willing to answer myself.
In my opinion, I think it shouldn't spend too much money on things such as public school for pre-K. I think that's going a little too far. And public education, I don't think it should be also spending too much money on, because as far as public education, I believe in public education. But in some sense, but like the glorifying of it, in my opinion, is not a good idea, because public education, first of all, I don't think it's a great learning space, as a lot of kids, as a lot of it is not it doesn't teach people stuff, but teaches them in a very generic manner that does not help them in any way, and it fails to account for competition that might arrive. So I mean, K through 12, I think it should, but otherwise, for pre-K and stuff, and too much government spending on it is wasteful because of the complex variables in the economy. Yeah. So another thing is, by the way, the social safety net, I've said before that I defend it, but again, too much money on it and too much handouts I don't think are going to help poor people at all. They're just going to bring them back to poverty again.
How do you think they will bring them back to poverty? And then I'll touch on the school thing.
Well, let's define what a handout is. A handout is giving, like, I just want to, is this like a UBI, do you want to say like as a UBI concept, or the concept of like, I don't know, food stamps, stuff like that?
Oh, that's a good question. Because I don't want to answer, I'd like you to answer the question then, and since asked, and then I'll answer my way. So I would say all of it, basically. So you could say UBI, you could say food stamps, you could say WIC. Which of these do you think are definitely good, you would like to keep, and which of them you think are just crap you would rather get rid of?
Well, I don't want to say I defend UBI, as that implies progressive taxation, but GMI, guaranteed minimum income, could work. Could work for a little bit, because, and I think it's an alternative to the welfare, to progressive welfare. But the other concepts, such as giving people a load of money for them to do nothing on and then come back to poverty, is not going to work, because we need people to, like, because it's better if someone works for something that will give the other person, I don't know, some kind of a profit or something to gain from the exchange, as opposed to them merely getting it, as opposed to them merely getting free money. I think. I don't know. That's my general. That's the broad answer. I don't know if you want a specific answer to that.
That's okay. Excuse me again. Well, how would you allocate, or how would you, I guess, enforce the GMI?
Well, I don't want to. Well, GMI, I believe, should be very minimal. Less necessary, but very minimal. Like, I definitely don't want it to be like progressive taxation for the rich, because when you tax the ultra rich, in my opinion, what happens? Sorry if I keep using the word "I," in my opinion. What's going to happen is that really they don't use that. They don't just stuff it up their mattress, or, like, I don't know, food, shelter, and stuff like that. They use it. There's two things, the main things that they use. One is for reinvestment in capital to create new businesses, and and charity, which is why I think taxing the ultra rich doesn't work. I think we should have a flat tax, and that may account for giving GMI to people. I'm against, and I want this to be used for something good. Like, if we're going to tax people, it has to be for something good, not wasteful military spending and other wasteful things that we don't need. I think it should be to establish a minor social safety net, but not too much that it would just bring everyone down. Like, instead of bringing the poor up, it might actually just bring everyone down to becoming poor. And we don't want that. We want it to be like that, as opposed to that.
Right. You don't want everything to crash.
Yeah.
Right?
And I don't want inflation to rise, because once you increase government spending, that will lead to high inflation. And Keynes said they're both evils, inflation and deflation, but deflation is more evil. So I'd pick inflation over deflation. But I think that inflation is actually going to lead to the worst problems, because you're going to have you're going to have someone, like, say you want to buy a product, that the products will be overpriced, and therefore for the poor that will not help them at all.
So why do you think inflation happens? That's my big question before we move on. want to go too far and get off that. What do you think inflation happens?
When government spending, when there's more government spending, there's an increase in the price level of goods, and just general services over a certain period of time. Meaning that supply, demand increases. That's what Keynes suggested, is that demand be increased in order to reduce the effects of deflation. Once demand increases, then prices automatically rise, and people will not be able to account for those things. So goods will cost more, and that won't be good for poor people and people who can't afford it. And neither will it be for the middle class. And in essence, the last people to go down will be the ultra rich. Everyone else is just gonna go down. The middle class not decimated, of course, because we're talking something more moderate. Let's just assume social democracy, but they will slowly go down. And democratic socialism, I think they will go even more down. Yeah, that's my opinion.
So the reason I disagree with that is first, because there's multiple reasons I do. First is that we produce enough food to feed everyone in the world. Excuse me, at least 1.5 times. We throw away so much fresh food in this country that it's not even worth making a joke about. So if there was a higher demand for food, we already have too much supply of it. Like we would probably just waste a lot less, at least in this country. And as far as inflation goes, like in general, the reason I kind of disagree with it is because the way that the market works now, everyone's looking for growth, right? Like they want growth from last year to go up. But that's kind of a fairy tale. Like we can't always have growth in a finite world where we have finite resources. That's literally impossible, right? And as far as money goes, like that's kind of finite too, until we print more when we feel like we need it, like we did in 2008 when we bailed out the banks. We literally just printed almost $1 trillion, or maybe over $1 trillion, just to stimulate the economy. But we don't do it for poor people for some reason. We don't do it for people who are in the middle class when the economy crashes. We don't stimulate people, we stimulate the economy. We stimulate the GDP, which is weird and silly because who drives the economy? It's really the people.
Definitely. It's people, which is why I'm sorry to interrupt. I think in a free market economy, that's what happens. People drive the economy. A consumer's choices drive the economy. Say if I'm running a business, a restaurant company,
yes.
if I say I give food, right, which the customer wants, and if the customer doesn't like it, then I have to adjust it to meet the consumer's demand. Otherwise, some other competing restaurants will just fly me out of business because that's what a free market capitalist society is. Whereas in a socialist economy, what happens is that the bureaucrats, the centralized bureaucrats, will own the means of production, and therefore say, instead of we have the democratic consumers' choices, we have bureaucrats' choices, which is oligarchy, not a representative democracy as we want it, as I think both of us want in a society.
Yeah. So you and I both dislike oligarchy.
Yes.
That's something else.
I think we don't like tyranny, both of us.
Yeah.
We're there, but
so we agree on that.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we're skipping a little bit. So if anyone has any questions to ask, like, are we gonna have a Q&A portion?
Yeah, I think this is how the format was: 10-minute opening statement, your 10-minute opening statement, around
Cool.
50-minute discussion, and a 25-minute Q&A.
Sweet. Okay. So don't be afraid to bring anything up. I'm not trying to skip anything, but I forget things really fast. And also, when we're talking like this, it's easy to just gloss over some things. So, all right. I'm trying to figure out how to best tackle this. Meritocracy.
Yeah, so I made a mistake in saying that I believe in meritocracy. I believe in that will naturally occur in a free market capitalist economy. That people who necessarily bring the most merit to society will gain the most capital out of that. If you're just going to be someone who's not going to contribute to our society, then it's unlikely to gain capital from it. Yeah.
But there's people who cheat at this game of the way that we have our economic system now. And let me be clear real quick, because I didn't state this earlier, and I meant to. Since I didn't write an opening statement, I forgot this part. I'm not just a pure socialist, right? I'm a democratic socialist, kind of. I'm not married to it, but as I told Greg here, I have a pretty serious relationship. So the thing is that's the closest thing that I found that agrees with the views that I already have. And I did a lot of research on this. And actually, I think I'm going to back up a little bit and just kind of tell you my thoughts here. Okay, do you want to talk about billionaires, or do you want to talk about healthcare?
We can talk about both if you want. We can talk about both if you want. Healthcare, we can talk about healthcare. We can also talk about billionaires if you want.
Okay.
You disagree with me, right?
I'm sorry?
You disagree with my points on both, right?
Probably. I think so. So I guess let's stick with the billionaires, because we are talking about taxing the rich. So the first thing that comes to mind here is how hard does one have to work to become a billionaire? Jeff Bezos, if you divide that, if you do the math, we'll say, this guy's worth over $157 billion.
Yeah, somewhere around that. It's pretty cool.
And if you do the math here, in May of 2018, this guy was making $11.5 million per hour. I make,
like, in 8 hours he could buy like one of those, like, those crazy houses on YouTube, like those.
Oh yeah, he could buy a lot of them. He can also buy all of the NFL teams, all the major league football teams.
Goodness.
And barely have a scratch in his wealth, which is absolutely insane. Excuse me. So how hard do I have to work to make $11 million or $11.5 million an hour? Because I'm making less than 20, and my dad works his butt off. Like, I wouldn't say he's lazy by any means, but he's not making even a tenth that. He's not making $1 million an hour. So how hard do we have to work to make as much as these people are making? And how much is it fair to tax them? Because if I took 99% of his money and never let him work again in his life, which is pretty authoritarian, I would never do that, and I disagree with any kind of authoritarian. But hypothetically,
we're not going in USSR. We're not going in US.
Yeah. So just hypothetically, if we taxed him 99% of all of his wealth and just let him just keep the rest, he doesn't get to make anything else, he'd be set for life. He'd still have over $1 billion.
Yeah.
So how hard do you have to work, and how much can we tax him and still be more?
Well, first, if a business is underpaying you, then you can ask for a raise, or you can strike with labor unions. That's, in a capitalist economy, these sorts of commons organizations exist, and they can be used to make businesses say, you have to pay me more, because unless you're dealing with something insane, some insane business or whatever, that's insanely, that business will be ran in the ditch if it does not pay their workers enough.
But that doesn't work if something like Amazon has a monopoly, right?
Yeah, but
you can't leave work A to go to their competition, which is actually just another conglomerate of Amazon.
Yeah, but Amazon has public shares, right? Just like Johnson and Johnson, Chevron, I think McDonald's, they all have public shares in order for people to be able to profit out of it well, in order for them to get a product that you want. I mean, otherwise that's not going to work. And people like Jeff Bezos, they're not going to stop working. They believe in what they do. Entrepreneurs generally, like Jeff Bezos and stuff, they believe in what they do, and therefore they will work hard to pay their workers as much as possible, and to get a product that you would want. Therefore, this consumer worker thing is still there, and taxing them is not going to change anything, because the majority of their money is spent on creating new businesses, and like saying giving $10 million to create a new business, and it's also to charity. Like, I mean, as far as I know, they donate like millions of dollars to charity, and that's a good thing. I mean,
sometimes billions.
Sometimes, yeah, billions. I mean, I heard one of the president, I forgot his name, he donated like $11 billion to charity, and he was very rich. So these people, so if we're taxing them, we're really taxing the middle class and below. It's not a tax to them. It's going to be the rich. It's going to be everyone else is going to go down, and then the rich are going to come slowly back down.
Right.
Everyone's going to go flat down.
But my response to that has to be that, yes, they're building new businesses and he's making more jobs, but also he wants to make more robot trucks, right? He wants to do more shipping through automation. That's actually going to get rid of jobs. That's going to destroy a lot of people's lives who are in the trucking industry. When people make these new jobs and these new businesses, the way that they compete is to drive the price down that the consumer pays. And Amazon is really good at that.
Like creating robot trucks?
Yes.
Okay,
he wants to do automated shipping.
Yeah, self-automated
trucking, shipping, yes. And by doing that, he's going to get rid of a ton of jobs. And in the meantime, he's creating a lot of jobs, but these jobs aren't going to last. Right?
Yeah.
Especially if he's trying to cut the means of production to cut down costs. If you're cutting down the means of production, very often that means you're cutting out people who have jobs there. Okay,
so my response to that would be that we need to create technological advance. This kind of thing, we have a conflict here. That's between whether we're going to have technological advance or whether we're going to have to sacrifice some manual labor for that. But what I have to say about that is that we need to have that sort of advance in order to create new stuff that will help a lot of people. These workers may get out of their manual labor temporarily, but they might use these new innovations and help them do other things, because they have, of course, there's going to be a temporary deflation. There's going to be that slight deflation that's going to go down, but that's going to be temporary, because once these technological innovations come into play, it's going to skyrocket back again to economic growth and people are going to sell these products and with I hope good money, but that might help a lot of people. I think. I don't know.
It could potentially, but just like the amount of money that they spend on charity, it's good that they're doing that, but they're going to have to spend a lot more on charity. The more jobs that they get rid of, and the less that they pay their employees to cut the means of production to compete with other businesses, the more people who are not going to make ends meet. Like if they have to cut wages, right, then they're not making enough money to bring home to feed their family, to raise their kids. Or to just live on their own. Like, it's incredibly difficult just to be a single adult or two single adults trying to live anywhere in the country, really, just to make rent, pay your bills, and eat food.
But in a socialist economy, or even a democratic socialist economy, instead of a couple of people having to suffer through that, everyone's going to suffer through that. Because the only people who are not going to suffer through that is the bureaucracy. Because once you just steal money from everyone, it's not going to, and temporary handouts, which are going to help for a temporary amount of time, everyone's just going to equalize, but equalize at a lower level. if you have equal money to everyone, which I think, do you believe in equal money? Do you believe that everyone should have equal money, or do you believe a more moderate version of that? I just want to clarify.
No, I don't think everyone should have equal money. I believe in a little bit of a meritocracy, but also that everyone should make enough money to make ends meet and support their family. Everyone. And then if anyone wants to work twice as hard, then you should get twice as much. But that doesn't mean you should get a million times more than anyone else.
But
investing doesn't equal work. Investing isn't work.
But due to inflation and deflation thus far, or of supply and demand, when the government gets involved in that, then it's going to lead to this. Because do you remember me talking about chaos theory?
Yes, I do.
That the economy is sensitive to initial conditions, meaning that when you give an order to a chaotic thing, then it's not going to make people's ends meet, because it can't keep up with the money changes going on and the gazillions, probably infinite, you could say infinite variables going on in the economy, which is why I think that I don't know, which is why I think that this is why people are not going to make their ends meet. It's just going to lead to everyone. I think it's going to lead to like overly ordered. I think we've established that like we agree with liberalism, but in order to have this whole nationalized economy and everything, which do you believe in a nationalized economy and nationalized bank?
I believe in a mixed economy.
So you're social democracy more?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm a democratic socialist. I believe in social democracy. I also believe in some form of capitalism. I just think it needs to be highly regulated. Like, I don't think there should be any billionaires. And no, I'm not like what Fox News says Bernie Sanders is. Like, he just wants to like eradicate all of the billionaires. No, I don't want to do that. I just don't think that they should ever have become billionaires, because like you said, we don't need to steal their money. But if we use the word steal like that, then I would have to say that they stole it in the first place. There's not a fair way to make $1 billion.
They can't steal it though, because consumer revolt will destroy that company. And I think that I think that it will lead to tyranny. That like when you control like the amount of money that a person has, that will lead to the same tyranny. Like we've established before that we both agree in social liberalism. But the same exact thing applies to economic liberalism, which is that it will, instead of tyranny of your body, it will lead to the tyranny inside my pocket, or a billionaire's pocket, which is why I don't know. And this whole black market will just emerge the more you regulate it, the more you regulate the legal, so to speak.
That sounds like a slippery slope argument to me, honestly. But let me ask it like this, because I think this is a really simple way to see if you can agree with me on any level or not. Do you agree with do you believe in a minimum wage?
I'm sorry to say, but I do not.
Do not believe in a minimum wage. Okay.
Because, and I'll tell you what,
Go for it. And then
the reason I don't believe in a minimum wage is that once you give a minimum wage, I think we've talked about jobs. Jobs will just get out, because businesses are not going to pay people. They're just going to pay people who have think. And you said that like the meritocracy, it's going to lead to full meritocracy. We're only going to pay the people who are skilled. How about the people who have an IQ lower than 85 or not? They won't have any jobs. And since there's a minimum wage of say $10, $15, whatever, then I'm sorry, but they're not going to be able to get those jobs in, because businesses will simply not hire them. Because if you agree on a wage, one last thing before you can talk.
Go for it.
If I say let's just say I'm a business and you have a worker. I'm a business. I say I will pay you $1 an hour. The guy's like, hell no, I'm not. You're not hiring me for this job. How about $20 million an hour? And the guy's like, no. Let's establish a common ground between. Okay. $11 an hour works for this level of job, because one, it does not lower the business's profits, and second, it does not, because lower the business profits if the guy leaves, and second, it's enough for the worker to sustain himself in his life, which is why I think a minimum wage wouldn't work if for people who are relatively unskilled as far as things go.
So it surprises me that you're not in favor of a minimum wage, because we just talked about that we think people should make enough money to support their families, right?
But people who have lower IQ, like IQ lower than 85, and don't have a lot of skills, will not be able to pay off their family with minimum. Like even I think Keynesian economics is like, or I think is against the concept of a minimum wage. I don't know. This may be one of our major disagreements. Maybe we must get over this. We have to.
I think we do have a disagreement here. So I'm gonna not nail you on the IQ thing. But I actually did have a part here that, okay, so the IQ thing and the minimum wage thing both. I think everyone should make enough money to live a life that you don't have to worry about anything. I don't think you should necessarily live a lavish life for doing, like, in quotations, nothing. But no matter what your IQ is or your physical ability is or anything like that, you should be able to get a job to make some money, right? And if you can't, then I think that the society should support you, because that's just the humanistic thing to do. We shouldn't let anyone die just because they were born with either a lower IQ or a mental illness or anything, right? We shouldn't just let someone fall by the wayside, because that starts to fall more under, or it starts to slide. It's that slippery slope again that just slides into like what the Nazis did, right? Or what authoritarianism leads to. Like everyone, should work. I'm going to get away from it. My point is, excuse me, for those like brothers and sisters, those friends and family that can't grasp certain concepts or do certain labor due to a multitude of likely issues, varying from mental illness to just physical disabilities. We need to have social programs that help carry them through their everyday private and social lives, just to make ends meet. Like, we need to make sure they can live, right?
But in my opinion, but then that will lower the desire to do charity amongst rich people. I want to get back to this.
No, I think that's charity.
Yeah, I want to get back to this rich people thing, like this, because I think this somewhat connects. When you tax ultra rich people to provide social programs, that will decrease the desire for rich people to give charity. In other words, it's just forcing people to give the government money, which I think is tyrannical, in order to fund for social programs. So which I don't know how to give a concluding sentence to this, but
that's okay.
To give I think so. I believe in charity more than the concept of stealing people from people's pockets, and then which I think will lead to tyranny. What do you think? I did not face this well at all, but
I understand what you're saying, and I'm going to be very honest with you and tell you that I used to think the same way. I used to hear that 1% of the population pays 99% of the taxes, and that's crazy. And that's not exactly right, but they do pay a lot more in taxes than we do because they have more money. And I thought that was wrong and awful. The issue is, again, something that you didn't quite answer, is that how do you do enough work? How hard do you have to work to make $1 billion? Right?
Well, you need to have, well, in order to make $1 billion, you must be incredible. You need to be, I think, incredibly smart and incredibly inept at creating. You need to have an idea. In order to create a business, this is what you need to have like a really good idea that like might potentially change, like seriously change people's lives.
Or
And
you
in order
need
for people, in order for consumers to give you that much money, you need to have a really seriously good idea. And of course, I'm not saying that everyone can do it. The average Joe can't do it. Probably the top 95% I can do. It takes a lot of creativity in order to create that stuff. But the idea in a capitalist economy is that in order to get more profit, like this is at the higher levels. I'm not talking about working. I'm talking about in general owners of businesses. It will require high creativity and a good idea to get their business going. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Even small business owners, they generally have an idea. I don't know. Say I want to create a cookie company. I'll need to have a good idea how to make consumers like my cookie, or bread, or whatever I sell. Yeah, that's my view. As far as working people go, they need to, if they do their job well, then they get paid more. They can say, hey, I'm not getting paid enough for the labor that I do.
And it's not easy to do that. So I'm going to make 2 notes real quick so I can not forget. Okay. So one, which I didn't get to just like a minute ago when I meant to, is yes, rich people pay kind of a lot in taxes. And I used to think that was awful. And I used to think that, hey, if they could just, do a lot of charity, spend their money in good ways, they can really help the economy. And that's awesome. These are smart people. How else would they have gotten their money? And it's a case-by-case thing. Some people got it in a semi-fair way. Some people kind of cheated. Some people make a lot of money off war. But my point is, what you're describing and what you said you're against is oligarchy. They just want to spend their the right way and help the economy that way. Oligarchy. That's what it is.
Why would it be oligarchy? Because a consumer revolt. Because there's such a thing as consumer revolt in a bureaucracy, such as in socialist planned economies. There's no consumer revolt. There's no consent of the governed. John Locke's concept of the consent of the governed. There's none of that. There's just there's the bureaucracy, and there's you do what I say or else kind of thing. Whereas in a corporation, consumers will say, hell no, I'm not doing this. You're a cheater, and you're not, and I'm not giving you my money for something that you're not, something useless or something that you cheated your way through. So, and plus which is why a lot of major monopolies, sometimes those get caught like he screwed up, and they fall because of consumer revolt. And in a capitalist economy, there's a difference between the bureaucracy and the free market. In the free market, there's consumer revolt, and in a bureaucracy, there is no consent of the government. That's my view on that. This is not.
I'm not advocating for bureaucracy at all. I'm against monopolies. I'm for workers' unions. I'm for workers' rights. And I think that the way to kind of fix the economy, because I don't think it's working for us now, excuse me, is one, we need to raise the minimum wage, but baseline, we need to have a minimum wage. Then we need to have a maximum wage. And then after that, like you said, people need to, consumers need to say something, they need to speak up, right? But really the workers need to have more say in the companies that they work in. I'm completely fine with the person who started the business making 10 times as much as anyone else in the company. And I'm sure most people would be okay with that, but I'm not really necessarily okay with them making 100,000 times more than anyone else in the company. And if you put democracy in the workplace, this is kind of what democratic socialism really, really advocates for. Is you mentioned shares earlier. If you give people 49 to 51% of the shares, people who work in the company. So they have a real hold on the company because they do all the work. They're the ones who literally do all of the work to make at the top the money. Right?
I somewhat disagree, as I think entrepreneurs definitely like work their butts off. I don't want to use that.
I don't think they work $150 billion.
They work a lot. I can assure you. I
agree. They do work.
It takes a lot to work. And by the way, as far as like the whole means of production thing, in a socialist economy where the workers own the meat, I don't know, say half of the shares, let's say.
Say half.
They're not gonna. Well, in that case, in America, they exist in a free market capitalist economy. There's so many businesses where workers at least own half of the company's shares, and there's fine, and that's fine with that. The businesses are fine with it. Business owners are fine with that. There's many companies like that. But in a socialist economy where there's a concentration of power, then there's a concentration of power in, say, the I don't want to use the word bureaucracy anymore, but when hold on, wait a minute, just one last thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
So they control half of the shares, but in a socialist economy, I think the workers would just leave those companies. They don't want to. They don't want to mess with that. This whole like, you have to have this, you have to have that, the whole strict regulations thing. So, I
think if we had more social safety nets, I think if we had something like UBI and Medicare for all, that way when someone left their place of employment because they suck and they don't like pay them enough to make ends meet, then I think we could do that. But right now, if you quit your job within a week, you have debt collectors on your butt. You could get kicked out of your home. And if you get kicked out of your home with your kids, you could be seen as unfit to raise your children. Then you just get your kids taken away because you're not a responsible adult. You want to work somewhere else, but the place you live, you don't have any real opportunities. And maybe you don't have $2,000 saved back because you don't work a good enough job to move and get a better job somewhere else. Maybe you don't have the education because society didn't give you a chance to be educated enough to apply for a job that would pay you enough. This is a multifaceted thing that we need to fix on several levels to really make what you just said work.
Yeah, but which is why minimum wage does not work, because these people who don't have enough skills, the businesses simply won't hire them. Which is why even if like we have a measly wage of say $8.75 an hour, let's just say, those people will be allowed to work for business owners to do something useful and gain capital off of that. And I don't think that a socialist economy, even a social democratic economy, will be able to account for those people well, because you have maximum work hours, you have stuff like that. Then the companies will just say screw them. And in a free market capitalist economy, they say, don't screw them. They can have a job. Maybe they won't have maybe they won't have that good of a profit. Say, I don't know, $35,000 a year. But back in the day, even a social democratic economy, such as like Sweden and stuff like that, it didn't work because prices for workers increased. It decreased. As I said before, inflation prices will increase, and wages for workers will decrease, and it will create less incentive to do good things. By the way, I think we shifted off this topic. I don't think you answered one of my questions. I think it was about chaos theory. What do you think about the fact that, like, when the government intervenes in the economy, that the economy is too sensitive to initial conditions in order for government to interfere? I just wanted to hear your opinion on that. I don't think you gave a response to that.
Yeah, probably not directly. I'm not too keen on just chaos theory in general, but I think that the government dipping its hand in any part of the economy can be a good or a bad thing. It depends on where and how it does it. And I don't mean to be vague. So I will specify more. Obviously, social safety nets, fire department, police, roads, busing, schools, higher education, because we both agree that helps the economy, and healthcare also, I think are all good things to have in a functioning society. Yeah. And yeah, we can jump on that here in a minute. But I think those are all good things. Also, you and I we just disagree on the minimum and maximum wage thing. And I understand that we do and why we do. But I do want to say on the business part of it, that I think we have to face it, that most businesses and workplaces, they are run as dictatorships. You have one person or a small group of people making major decisions at the top. They control the means of production and the result of production. And if the means or the results of said production have a negative outcome on your community or a neighboring one or the wider world, what are you to do? Because, yeah, we could say something as consumers, but in today's society, that doesn't seem to have much hold. So I advocate for a government of, by, and for the people. So as a government, we need to regulate business.
But the thing is that once the government regulates the business, then it will create less incentive to do creative stuff that will help our society. Like I talked about this was my second problem, which is that it would stifle competition. And if once we stifle competition, I think competition is the key to our society. If we don't have any kind of competition, then I'm not saying that you don't believe in any kind of competition. I know you believe in competition, but the more competition that we have, the better. Meaning, like in healthcare, for instance, I talked about this before, but there's going to be less incentive to actually have good healthcare, which is why the more socialist economy you have, or the more it's controlled, then the less quality healthcare you would have, and therefore not only technological advancement will decrease, but the ability to do good healthcare will decrease. And that's caused by the fact that there will be less medical advances. Say we have an innovation in cancer. Less people will want to cure cancers or certain forms of it, because there would be less incentive to. And I think that once there's more incentive to, then it would help our society more. So poor people will have the good quality healthcare that they need, as opposed to some free healthcare that is crap.
So one, point 5, I humbly disagree with all of that. One, healthcare would not be free, and I mean, because it would be a taxpayer thing, right? Instead of paying your deductibles or copays, you just pay a higher tax. And for most people in the middle class, they would actually pay less. And people who are in poverty would probably pay more, but they would actually get health care. They would actually, because a lot of people just don't even have health insurance. And it wouldn't stifle, I don't think, the drive to still have good health care. Just take, for instance, insulin. The patent for insulin was sold for $1 because it shouldn't be a profit motive to save lives. The man who made it, and the name escapes me now, he sold it for $1 because he's like, this belongs to society. This is going to save lives because people die from diabetes. It shouldn't be, excuse me, $300 a vial. If you look at the fire department, they don't have to compete with each other to be better. We have good fire departments, and that's something that's not privately run.
Yeah, well, okay, well, firefighters and police, stuff like that. That's a little bit of a different issue. I'm not suggesting anarcho-capitalism. I mean, I think it is a different issue. Firefighter, like police and stuff like that. Those help people save lives. Because if there's disagreements in courts, like this is the problem with anarcho-capitalism. If there's disagreements in courts, who's going to solve that? You'll eventually need a bureaucracy. There's some kind of a government to solve that. Unfortunately, but that's the harsh reality. So, but healthcare is different. I mean, if you want to have good police officers, you also need you don't just need taxpayer money. You need to hire good people that can give good police officers. And I have also noticed one thing that
Yeah.
I don't think I don't know. I don't want to sound too like labelish or anything, but
Okay.
what I've noticed is I don't know the majority of democratic socialist arguments I've seen you don't seem to be given. I think you're suggesting capitalism, like just a regulated form of it, which I don't know because the free healthcare stuff. I don't know the government owning stuff. I don't think that was very. I don't think you're that socialist, and I think we have a lot of agreements, and I really like that we have a lot of agreements. So I just wanted to give that in as a
I
thing.
appreciate that, and I do too. I appreciate finding where agreements are.
Yeah, we agree on a lot of things that capitalism is generally the best thing, but I'm
I
not
don't
sure.
think it's generally the best thing. I think
Like
it's
not the best thing, but like probably one of the best or the best economic system for
no,
now. Not
because we're going to start disagreeing more.
oh no.
No, because
Not a perfect economic system, of course.
yeah, it's
But
another socialism. That's why I said like I believe in a mixed economy. I believe that we can have capitalism. I am not an advocate for capitalism, but I think that capitalism should be met with a strong dose of socialism, is what I believe. I think that it should be regulated, and I think it should be regulated by the government, who is represented by the people. I don't think that the government we have today is ready to dip its hand in to make a social society, because it will just turn into authoritarianism. I think that would be bad. I think the government we have right now would be not good handling like making this a socialist government.
I don't even think our economy is that good. I think some of the problems you've outlined. I don't even think our economy is that free market capitalist. To be honest with you, it's very crony. I think it's crony capitalist and very Keynesian in nature.
Yes.
But I think where we diverge is you're saying, well, maybe we need a little bit more government spending in that. Whereas I'm saying to create workers, owning the means of production, healthcare, and stuff like that. Whereas what I'm suggesting is that we have less of that government intervention and have more technological innovation and less monopoly of power.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
We are, forgive me, I'll give you a chance to respond, but I just want to let everybody know we're going to go to Q&A in just a minute. So go ahead, Mac.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you, James.
You bet.
I was going to say I agree, because this crony capitalism has turned into oligarchy. In my view, and not just my view, but a lot of people's views. And that's why I think we need to have a progressive tax rate, because we're not going to hurt any rich people by taking away all but $100 million from any of them. So we should at least just put a progressive tax rate in to help everyone else. Because if we do that to everyone across the board, we don't really have to worry about the inflation so much, because they're all struggling. No one's going to be at the top. No one's going to be racing to that $200 billion point anymore, because they'll know they can never reach it. So they'll just try to strive to be set for life, which everyone should be striving for.
Yeah, but the part where I disagree with is that I don't think I didn't say that it hurts the rich. I actually think quite the opposite. It hurts everyone else because the rich donate to charity. They don't, as I've said before, they don't just stuff it up their mattress or spend it on food, shelter, and luxury items, even though some of them do. But it's nowhere near enough to the amount of money that they still have. What they do is, again, as I've said before, the new businesses, a lot of charity to help people, and the progressive tax rate, which says, but we need to tax them, and that will somehow help the poor. I think it does the opposite effect. Because take an example.
Okay,
I don't want to.
One second. We're just to go to Q&A really quick, just because we do have a double header tonight. So I want to, just because Gregory, you started, I want to give Mac the last word. But if you can do this in maybe 30 seconds, and then we'll give Mac a chance to have a 30-second wrap up, and then go to Q&A. Thanks.
Okay. So let's just say you have 3 people. one of them works more, and one of them, and the other one kind of works somewhat, and the other one does not work at all. It works a little, but nowhere near as much. What the progressive tax rate is saying is that that person who worked more should be taxed more in order to pay for the people who didn't work as hard, which I don't think works. Because like, even though it's actually frustrating for some people, this is even middle class, upper middle class people who work a lot just to make ends meet, not the ultra rich people. And they have to get taxed in order even for the labor that they work, I don't know, more than someone who doesn't work more, and they have to pay for the people who don't work more. But it's not the person's job to pay for something that the other person does not like labor for. So I'd love to hear what Mac has to say on that, but we have to wrap up, unfortunately.
Yeah. Are we still gonna have closing statements?
After if you would like, we can give you a chance for a closing statement, especially given that we've had Gregory start, and then we've got to go to a quick Q&A where we will kind of be just cruising through it. So,
okay,
if you'd like, the floor is yours.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll do a quick closing statement then. In response to what he just asked, though, excuse me, is I feel like you're contradicting yourself, because you're talking about the work again. You're talking about taking money away from people who worked so hard, and taking away from them to give money to people who didn't work as much. And that's not what I'm talking about at all.
I meant for upper middle class, not for the ultra.
Just to be sure we get done on time, just because I promised the other guys that we'd start at 9:30 or so.
Yikes. Okay. Yeah. So shoot. Because I thought I was gonna have a closing statement later. That's the one I kind of prepared. But
I will. We'll go ahead and do it, and I'll just let them know we'll start like 5 minutes late or so. Okay.
All right. Well, I'll go with my college for all part. Why I think we should have college for all. And this kind of sums up my whole little spiel here. Excuse me. Okay, I'm done coughing. So there's a reason why some people look down on those who have nothing more than a high school diploma. Because you don't learn quite enough to become a fully functional being in this advancing economy. With just that. You aren't given specialized training in high school, and employers don't want to take the time or money doing it themselves. You aren't taught critical thinking or philosophy skills in high school, for the most part anyways, to combat complex ideas in politics, economy, or religion, which all in itself puts a large part of the population at a disadvantage. Which is what? It is inequality by definition, not having the same education. And again, for those people that we know or don't know even better, who can't grasp these concepts due to a multitude of likely issues like mental illness, or physical issues. Like, no one chooses to be autistic or have cerebral palsy or have diabetes, right? We need to lift these people up high enough so they can compete with everyone else on a level playing field. Some people need more just to play on normal. Video game difficulty reference. So I think that's about it. I don't really need to go any further than that, because I know we are short on time. But if you don't have education, like higher education, to just function in the world, in politics, workplace, economy, and religion, you don't have anything. And if you don't make enough money to have the time to do it, you're screwed there too.
You got it. So thank you very much, GreySkeptic, for that closing statement. And so sorry that I've kind of like rushed the ending, you guys. just it was basically such a good conversation, and it's like sometimes we get debates or discussions that are more, what's the word I'm looking for? They have like more meat to them, and sometimes we don't. And so when we get the ones that have a lot of meat to them, like tonight, where it was really substantive, is like I usually like kind of try to let it go as long as it can before the Q&A. And so thank you guys very much. I've also been getting a lot of really good feedback in the live chat as well. So
What are they saying?
Greg brought some bacon, so nice job, Greg.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, then by the I'm really happy. Just one thing that like we found so many agreements. I thought it would be a little bit different, but I think you're very reasonable as far as.
I appreciate it.
You're very, very, very reasonable on this. I think our disagreements are not even that major. They're very minor. Like maybe more taxes or more tax cuts. But I think we have the same idea of how we should of an economy.
I think we have a few similar ones, and I'd look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, maybe we could arrange another time which we can further discuss this issue.
You betcha. Just reading someone else saying, Converse Contender said, meaningful conversation. So I absolutely agree. It's been a pleasure. And also want to say thanks to our debaters because of them being here. The debaters are the lifeblood of the channel. I mean, we can't thank them enough. And they are the reason that we have these super chats that have come in that will go to UNCF, which, as I said, is Charities for Historically Black Colleges and Universities, or I should say students for at those universities. So we are very excited to read through these super chats. Steven Steen, thanks to your super chat, he said, Gregory is smarter than me, comrades. It's probably true. All right, Brian Steven Steen, thanks for your super chat, buddy. He said, Brian Stevens, thanks for your super chat. He said, 2 seconds in and Gregory has won. Debate over. So you have a fan out there, Gregory. Let's see.
Oh yeah, I saw Brian Stevens out there, like being a fan of me. Appreciate it very much.
Maynard Saves, thanks for your super chat. He said, James, what are you really listening to? Bob in Your Head, Snoop, Tool, or Amy Grant? I think I've heard of Snoop and Tool, but yeah, no, my head's bobbing up and down between the live chat and the debaters. But very good joke. I like it. Who is Amy Grant? Is that a new? Okay, anyway. I don't know what's cool anymore. The Hamable of Carthage, thanks for your super chat. They said sanctions and fracking harmed Venezuela. If we're not sure who would like to respond to that. Either or both.
Wait a minute. What did he say again?
They said sanctions and fracking harmed Venezuela.
Sanctions and fracking.
Yeah.
Like I think that's directed at me.
I think maybe. But
I think that's directed at me.
Because I agree with it. So, because sanctions are like economic warfare.
I think okay. I disagree because initially Venezuela was doing really well in terms of its economy. It was prospering. It was nowhere near perfect, but it was at the point where it was very mineral. It was very rich in resources, natural resources. But then it came crashing down when one of like a horrible leader came in, like Maduro afterwards. Like how am I forgetting his name? How am I forgetting? Can someone remind me? What? No, not Maduro. The guy who came afterwards. Before.
Okay, that would be Hugo Chavez.
Yes, Hugo Chavez. My goodness.
The economy did super duper well with him.
It didn't. Poverty. There was crime increased. It went absolutely horribly. Venezuela. It did not.
Only with the opposition party, but
what?
I said only with the opposition party, but that's something we must disagree on again.
But like people wanted to eat dog. People needed to eat dogs just to get used. Like if you look it up on YouTube, people like were saying, "I'm looking for a dog, a cat, something like that." Like,
that's some pretty strong propaganda.
It's not propaganda.
One second. Well, just to let's see. Okay. Forgive me, just so we don't get too bogged down in each discussion, or I should say super chat question. I just gotta have to kind of keep moving. Sorry, guys. Jimmy Ventura, thanks for your super chat. They said, thank you, James, for all the great content you provide. Well, all credit to the debaters, as they, like I said, are the lifeblood of the channel, so we're thankful for them. And thanks for everybody's questions and ideas. Like, this channel is truly an abstract entity. So Steven Steen, thanks for your super chat. He said, James took my mod status away because he said I was too beta. Then he said, it's true. One day I hope to be half the alpha male he is. From Comrade Steven. Oh, gosh. He's a troll. Thanks, Steven. Maynard Saves, thanks for your super chat. They said, to be labeled a prodigy superficially can be damaging come adulthood. A lot to live up to.
I agree.
It is a lot to live up to. I never meant to put pressure on you by giving you that name, Gregory.
I believe this was clickbait. The idea was like for a clickbait, like, oh my god, a prodigy. It's I agree that it's somewhat damaging to someone's
I was terrified.
You can't please everybody. So next up, Converse Contender, thanks for your super chat. They said, for the charity. Thanks for that, Converse Contender. We appreciate that. Helios575, thanks for your super chat. They said, Prodigy, please tell me your justification for the top 400 families paying less than 23% of the income and the largest corporations paying 0 for taxes. And they said Amazon paid 0 but got back a $213 million rebate.
Who's paying 23%?
They said the top 400 families are paying less than 23% of the income. I think they mean income tax, like total income tax that's collected.
I think that's what they meant, yeah.
Well, yeah, monopolies are getting out of it, and that's a bad thing, which is why trying to create, which is the black market that emerges when you progressively tax people too much in this crony capitalist society, which is why people who are working class, people who actually want to work, who want to actually get a living, have to pay their taxes, but then there are these people who on the top who cheat. And that's an unfortunate fact of life. But I don't understand how that relates to capitalism. In fact, I would say that therefore we need to lower the taxes. We need to, in general, lower taxes so that we can have, as I've said before, a prosperous economy and not have a bunch of cheaters who don't pay the taxes.
Gotcha. And they said, just to finish the super chat, the super chat, they said, so Amazon got back a $213 million rebate, but the poor and middle classes pay 24 to 26%. So if you felt like you've addressed that, then we can go over to, what's the word I'm looking for? We can go to the next super chat, or if you want to address that last point, you can.
I think that was generally connected. That was connected to my general point. Yeah.
You got it.
Wait, what? Wait, what, Mac?
Hold on. No, we're not going. Sorry. Mara, thanks for your super chat. They said, Mac, what is your definition of socialism?
A definition of socialism. My definition of socialism, because there are many definitions. There's different types of socialism. I'll just go with the general one that I think that is the most workable one. It is because most people say that it is the government's or the state's control of like the means of production and so on and so forth. But I like to say that it more or less is like state regulation of the workplace or work production. That's kind of why I add the democratic part to it, because it should be a people's government. It should be a government of, by, and for the people, which we don't necessarily have right now. We really do live in an oligarchy. So I don't think that every government or every country can run a socialist government. And I don't think every country can run a capitalist government either, or economy. I apologize. Capitalist economy. Excuse me. I think different things work in different places, and different economic and different political systems can work in different areas. You just have to find the right mix to make them work.
May I just jump in one last time? I think that New Zealand and Australia are good examples of free market capitalist economies that have worked and are not crony capitalist like our current current economy. And I think they've prospered, unlike the other And even like Scandinavian countries, it could be argued that they're more free market capitalists than our current government, which is why they score so high on economic freedom indexes. And it's that's my 2 cents. But yeah.
If you want to respond, Mac, you can. Just because the question was directed at you. Originally, the original question.
Right.
If you want to respond to Gregory.
I wasn't gonna say anything else on. I was gonna let him lead on it, but I was just gonna. I'll say that I think New Zealand and Australia are really good examples, or have really good examples of democracy as well, since they have the ranked choice voting and stuff. They really do have a tighter hold.
Yeah, but we
gotcha. Okay, Gregory. So sorry. Just to kind of move through as fast as possible so that I don't delay the next debaters.
This is interesting.
Thank you very much. Jeff Jarrett said, seriously, quote unquote, GreySkeptic has no clue about real life. That doesn't seem like much of an argument. If you want to respond, you can, GreySkeptic. If you don't, if you want to ignore it, you can too, whatever you'd like.
He's entitled to his opinion, and I respect it, but I humbly disagree.
Gotcha. Thank you. Vemcar, thanks for your super chat. They said, what about the exorbitant amount of money that the U.S. spends on its military and military adventures around the world? That spending needs to be cut.
Who is that directed to?
I think you, but I'm not sure.
Wait a minute. What was the question again?
They said, what about the exorbitant amount of money that the U.S. spends on its military and military adventures around the world? This spending needs to be cut.
Well, the military, okay, so first of all, I would like to say that I'm a non-interventionist, and I believe that when military gets involved in various places, it will lead to the greatest disasters, such as the Iraq War and other general attempts. Like, now we're trying to fight ISIS and stuff, but I think that could lead to too much. And going to and adventuring around the world with military spending that will not work is in my opinion going to lead to disasters that have happened through territorial expansion and the concept of nationalism, such as one of my favorite, again, free market economist philosophers defended, Friedrich Hayek, and Ludwig von Mises, who is also not too bad as well.
Gotcha.
And hold on a sec. And just one last thing. And so therefore, I'm not like completely like strength through peace through strength, strength through peace. But I would say that in order to we need some sort of like peaceful non-interventionism and not interfere with the world's problems and not be the world's policeman. Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's why I'm against neoconservatism and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. And with that, the last 2 super chats, I'm just going to rather trollish toward GreySkeptic. Not much.
Yes.
These aren't really as much arguments, so I'm going to actually pass by these because it's, as an example, Happy Heathen says, wow, GreySkeptic is super supremacist, isn't he? Again, I'm like, where does this come from? Okay, so
I'm slightly confused.
They said GreySkeptic is supremacist. I don't know. That's what everybody does nowadays. You call somebody a supremacist, that's like the club you can pull out. But anyway,
counts as a logical fallacy, so that's fine.
I don't know what he's supremacist to exactly.
It's I have no idea. Like I said,
maybe
I'm not even going to read the other one. It's even more trollish. With that, I want to say thank you so much, everybody, for being here. We really appreciate our guests being good sports, taking the trollish comments from the super chat, and more importantly, just getting to listen to them in this deep conversation has been a pleasure. So with that, also, almost forgot to mention, we are very excited. I don't think I mentioned it at the start because we had mentioned that Destiny will be back this Sunday. But it is the case for the first time ever, and so sorry, you guys. Thanks for your patience for me kind of like I said, kind of like moving things really fast at the end. We are having a doubleheader tonight. So Revenge of the Flat Earthers is next, as we have Pat, or I should say Killer Whale as he goes by now, who's called out Team Skeptic. They will be debating right here in just a few minutes. So that will be a lot of fun. And again, just want to say thank you so much for our guests who are here tonight. Yeah, you bet, Gray. What's up?
Real quick, I'm sorry to do this, but I would like to shameless plug real quick because my other channel's not in the description below, and that's the one I'm on every week. It's the League of Extraordinary Atheists for Humanism, and we cover politics and economics and religion all the time. So please check that out. We go live in about an hour every Friday. So if you guys are still here, that's cool. Just come over afterwards or check us out tomorrow morning.
All right. This was great debate. I think very intelligent, man. This was a great debate. I think we have a lot of agreements, which is what we wanted. But I have to leave. Bye.
You've had it. Thank you guys so much. It's been a true pleasure. Everybody keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. Take care.